2 days later. Having been in the right place at the right time to see my master and very good friend embrace the task that lies before him, and having seen my boss affirm that commitment, I slipped quietly back to my office. From the operations room, it would now better be named the observation room, I watched Jesus walk off into the desert, leaving behind him the fuss and chatter of human society. As he went, he was accompanied by Math, as always, and also by Michael, leading a small troop of his most trusted assistants. Michael was still wearing the look of disapproving resignation that he's had since our recent meeting. That was 2 days ago. This morning, Earth time, the great warrior angel stormed into my office and launched directly into a detailed demand. "I need authorization for an all-out war immediately," he insisted. When he noticed that I was not responding to the urgency of his request, he continued, "Jesus is about to be totally surrounded by several battalions of opposition forces, led by Lucifer himself." Still, I waited. Michael fired off another round. "A short while ago, Jesus entered opposition-controlled territory. There is nothing I can do there with a small troop. I will need all our full-time forces if we're to have any chance of Jesus coming out of there alive." I could tell that my silence was irritating Michael and had just resolved to speak when he started again. "For heaven's sake, Oriel, sign the wretched declaration. We do not have any time to spend on logistical niceties." "Michael," I said firmly, "do you think Jesus knows that the desert is a stronghold of the opposition?" "Of course he does," he replied impatiently. "And am I right in thinking that he walked into the desert of his own free will and headed directly for their headquarters?" "Yes." "Considering that he's your boss's son and that you are only an archangel, which of the two do you think is most likely to understand exactly what's happening here?" "But if I'm not supposed to help him in a face-to-face confrontation with the leader of the opposition, what good is it my following him around at all?" "If it is a face-to-face confrontation," I replied calmly, "I have no doubt whatsoever that the son is quite safe. Your job is to watch his back, and that back is currently unprotected because you are too busy panicking." And then I added more firmly, "Now get down there and do the work your boss has given you." He left. It is a long time since the leader of the opposition had a face-to-face meeting with his creator. He will, I'm sure, try hard to exploit the inherent weaknesses of Jesus' human nature. And human nature, as we know, can be terrifyingly weak. My position of no doubt is rapidly changing. The more I think about it, the more I find myself agreeing with Michael. This is a very dangerous venture. Next day. The atmosphere here is very tense. There is none of the usual storytelling and song-singing of heaven. Everyone knows that our boss's campaign has reached crisis point. There have been so many angels happening to drop into my office saying, "I just thought I'd say hello," and then straying next door into the operations room that I've installed a large monitor in the great gathering place of heaven. Apart from essential tasks, the whole of angeldom are watching and waiting for the opposition to make its move. So far, nothing's happened. Some Earth days later. Still nothing's happened. As far as we can see, Jesus is on his own in the middle of the desert, surrounded by opposition forces. Every day at sunrise and sunset, he walks 2 or 3 miles across the sand and rock to a small water spring, has a long drink, and then returns to the cave where he's been sheltering from the desert winds. Every day, a detachment of opposition spirits follow him. Their leader, however, stays outside the sun's temporary shelter. I expect something is happening that we cannot see from heaven, something utterly earthly. They are in the leader of the opposition's home territory. Tomorrow I shall visit Michael and Math to find out what they can tell me. Late the next day. Michael is much happier than last time I spoke with him. He has settled into the bizarre routine of this silent standoff. He posted a small force at strategic points so that he knows exactly what the enemy are doing at any time. He's also insisted on providing Maff with a personal security squad. Maff, apart from being irritated by the constant attention of his angelic minders, has been watching Jesus intently. He explained to me that the leader of the opposition is concentrating entirely on Jesus' physical appetites and fears. That is why we in heaven have been completely incapable of seeing what's happening. He had said something about stimulating certain areas of the brain so that Jesus can see things in his mind that do not actually exist. With Michael's permission, I pushed through this ring of rebel angels that were escorting Jesus through his evening drink and walked along beside him. We said nothing. He is physically weak from not eating, but I was more concerned to discover that he is spiritually weak from the unrelenting bombardment of terrors and passions that the leader of the opposition has subjected him to. I expect that the enemy's plan is to wait until his resolve is broken down and then attack. I wish I could be sure that such a plan would fail. Day 39. I received a message from Maff today, delivered by one of Michael's toughies. Jesus is very weak indeed. Expect the enemy to make his move. I sent a message back to Michael. Remember, do nothing unless I tell you. Day 40. Maff was right. Jesus did not emerge from his cave this morning and did not walk to the spring for a drink. Noticing this, the leader of the opposition entered the rocky hole. The most rebellious of all angels stooped down and picked up a stone from the cave floor. Michael tensed and moved a hand to his weapon, anticipating that the enemy would throw the stone at Jesus. He did not. His tone was gentle. His target was Jesus' mind, not his body, and he focused on his most immediate physical need. If you are the Creator's son, he said smoothly, tell this stone to turn to bread. Jesus looked longingly at the lump of rock that was held out to him. I believe that in his mind the enemy was conjuring the smells and flavours of freshly baked bread. Among the archangels, we've tended to underestimate the power of our former colleague who has taken over the globe of the earth. This was a very clever attack. I didn't doubt that the sun would see through it. The question was whether he would be able to resist it. After a long pause, Jesus replied, "It is written, man does not live by bread alone." A few moments later, Lucifer emerged from the cave, followed by Jesus. Slowly and for Jesus, painfully, they climbed to the top of the rocky outcrop into which the winds of centuries had carved Jesus' cave. At times, the Prince of the Earth, as he likes to call himself, even helped Jesus' fragile body up the rocks. From the vantage point at the top, they could see to their north the Judean mountains in which Jerusalem is situated. To the south and east lay the deep valley of the Sea of Death, and beyond that the territories of Israel's former enemies, now also conquered by Rome. I will give you all of this, the leader of the opposition asserted. It is mine after all, if you will kneel down and worship me. Jesus did not stop to reply, but turned to climb back down to his cave. As he went to himself, he said to himself, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." The enemy had preyed on Jesus' physical needs and now had lent on the human lust for power and authority. While Jesus clambered slowly downwards, his opposition remained on the hilltop, considering what other weaknesses he might exploit. All of a sudden, the dark angel flew at Jesus and scooped him up into the air, followed by Michael, Maph, and other assorted angelic spirits. They headed straight for Jerusalem and came to rest on the roof of the great temple. Clearly, the leader of the opposition had been rattled by Jesus' resilience. His tone was no longer conciliatory. His target this time was the insecurity that is a fundamental feature of all human minds. "If you are the Creator's Son," he shouted, "throw yourself down from here. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you carefully. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not hurt your foot against a stone." There was silence as Jesus floundered in a whirlpool of self-doubt. The question nagged in the folds of his brain. Am I the Son of God? Am I really? Is it possible? Wouldn't it be good to be sure once and for all? As I watched from the safety of my office, I became aware that someone else was in the room, standing behind me. I turned round to see my boss stooping over my shoulder, his attention fixed on the roof of the temple. Jesus walked to the edge of the roof and looked down at the stone pavement far below. As he did, I looked to see if Michael or Maph were moving. They were as still as death, waiting for a command from me. I, in turn, looked at my boss. Without removing his gaze from his son, my boss spoke quietly. "Whatever happens, do nothing." I repeated the instruction to Michael and Maph, and then waited for Jesus to choose between his faith and certainty. Did he understand, I wondered, that if he attempted to grasp certainty, he would lose everything? The leader of the opposition was motionless, no less anxious than we were. This was his best shot. His plan was poised on the brink of failure as much as ours. Jesus straightened himself and turned to face his tempter. There was a strength in his posture that I had not seen for many days. "It is written," he said, "do not put the Lord your God to the test." Without a word, the leader of the opposition flew off, defeated. His cronies followed. My boss spoke to me urgently. "Get Jesus out of there and get some food into him." With that, he left the room. I sent an order down to the temple roof. "Well done, team. Maph, fly Jesus out of there to a secure place and nurse him back to health. Boss's orders. Michael, take a few days' rest." I'm still shaking from the tension of that encounter. Our enemy has become an expert at manipulating the thoughts of humans. We must be careful never to underestimate that ability.